Now we're going to take a look at circles here. We're going to start off with a couple very important measurements when dealing with circles. The first point I want to make sure that you're aware of is what is known as the center point of the circle. So this is the dead center of the circle, and that is where your measurements will begin. Now you have two main measurements here. Now any point that measures from the center point to the outside of the edge of the circle is known as the radius. A measurement from the center of the circle to the outside edge of the circle is the radius. Now that radius distance is never going to change. It is always going to be the same distance no matter where you take the radius at any point on the circle. So if I decided that, hey, I wanted to measure the radius from the center point to right here, that's going to be exactly the same. This is going to be equal to this measurement over here. They're never going to change. The other measurement that you need to be aware of, so we've got our radius down here, is our diameter. And diameter is when a measurement that goes through the center point of the circle from edge to edge. So our gray line here represents our diameter. Now, because of the way that the two of these are measured, we can come up with two very simple equations that represents that. For example, the measurement R for radius can be measured by taking diameter and dividing it by 2. Or the way we generally write it in algebra is d over 2. Okay, radius equals diameter times 2. Our diameter divided by 2. Consequently, we have our diameter equation, which is going to be the opposite of that, which is going to be 2 times the radius. Okay, so far what we've measured is we've measured the distance across the entire length of a circle, which is known as diameter, and we've also measured from the center point to the edge, which is known as the radius. So we've got those two measurements down. Now when we look at something like a rectangular shape and we wanted to measure the distance around, it would be known as the perimeter. That we know so far. But the question is, well, what do you call it when you want to measure the distance around a circle? And what that's referred to as is the circumference. So the circumference can be calculated in a very simple way, and that is simply by taking the diameter and multiplying it by an irrational number known as pi. And pi is represented in this squiggly little symbol here, and it is approximately 3.14, 3 and 14 hundredths. Now, pi is an irrational number because it is a non-terminating decimal and it can't be represented as a fraction, and it never repeats itself. So it's a very unique number to circles and to mathematics, but it's known as an irrational number. So this symbol here, pi, is what we're going to do. So we can say that circumference C is equal to d times pi. All right, so since we know that circumference equals diameter times pi, which is 3.14, and since we know that the radius is 2 times the diameter, or diameter equals 2 times the radius, we can also say that circumference is equal to 2 times the radius times pi. All right, let's take a look at a typical problem here. So what we've got is we want to measure the circumference of this circle, and we've been able to measure out that our diameter is 8 meters across this circle. And because we know that the diameter is 8 meters, we can also calculate out that the radius is only 4 meters, since the radius is half the distance of the diameter. So we have our simple equations here. So we've got circumference equals diameter times pi. So we can just plug in those numbers and say, well, C in this case equals 8 times 3.14. Now, it's very important that we realize that because we're dealing with an irrational number, we never actually can get a true equal. So we put a little dot above it here to represent that it is approximately the correct answer. Because obviously the number 3.14 has to be an estimate because it has to be shortened down to the nearest hundredth. All right, so now all we have to do is just calculate it out, and we come up with a final answer of 25.12. And therefore, we can tell that the distance around the outside of this circle is in fact 25.12 meters, and that is obviously approximation, so it's an approximate of 25.12 meters.